Meanwhile, presidential climate envoy John Kerry meeting with China's premier and top diplomat earlier today in Beijing. Another member of the Biden team going to China is saying China and the United States could use climate cooperation to redefine their relations. Fox News' White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich grilled the Biden administration on how it plans to hold China responsible for hacking into government emails. This happened yesterday as more senior cabinet officials go to Beijing hat in hand. Watch this.
The Treasury Secretary said of the hacking attack that she has concerns. The U.S. has expressed those concerns to China, but nevertheless, we intend to deepen our discussions with China and increase our engagement. Doesn't that send the message to China that they can keep getting away with this?
No, the message it sends is that the way you handle tensions, the way you deal with disagreements is being able to have candid, forthright conversations and hold each other accountable for behavior as appropriate.
Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, delighted to be here, Maria.
So what do you make of John Kirby's response there, General? I know that you've given this administration lots of praise for some of the things it's doing regarding China, but we continue to question what appears to be a soft response to things like this hacking incident, the spy balloon, police stations in America. I mean, the list is long in terms of China's behavior against America, and yet we keep sending more people there to try to get a communication going.
Well, I think, Secretary Kerry going there it always seems to me in complete isolation from what reality is. I mean, reality is that President Xi has told his military to be prepared for war by 2027 to take back Taiwan by force. And I don't think we should treat that as an idle comment. Their repression at home has increased. The aggression in the region has increased. They're conducting the most comprehensive penetration of American society in our history, and we just have evidence of it again this weekend. I don't think I've heaped a lot of praise, Maria, on this administration. If you say anything positive about the administration, then people draw that conclusion. I give them credit for strengthening allies and partners' relationship in the region. But what Kerry is about is not connected to anything that China is actually doing in the world. And to think that he could use climate change as the means and the vehicle to fundamentally change the relationship with the United States and China to a more positive one, I think is absolutely delusional on his part. The thing we've learned about President Xi for over 10 years now is that he has strategic goals to achieve. He talks about them continuously, and he is about them every single day. And talks by administration officials do not change that momentum one bit. Words don't mean that much to the Chinese. Only actions do. Standing up to China, having resolve and steadfastness with them, and pushing back on them, those are the things that count.
Yeah. And I guess what I meant was you've tried. You've tried to advise this administration on where to go in this complex story that is communist China. But, I mean, are we to believe that after all of the promises that the CCP has broken, that they're actually going to agree to help climate change and do something in terms of changing the fact that they are producing products for the world with an enormous amount of pollution in the air? I mean, are we to believe that they're actually going to change that in any way, shape, or form because John Kerry wants a promise about climate change from the #1 polluter in the world?
No, of course not. They're still opening coal-fired factories on a regular basis, where the rest of the world is trying to close them. They certainly exist in the third world for obvious reasons. They need electricity. The only thing that China is doing, and it's acting in their own self-interest, and that is they're building electric cars faster than anybody else in the world is doing. They've built about 6 million. They sold about 6 million last year. They represent about 58% of the industry. And why are they doing that? Well, if you've ever been to Beijing or Shanghai, and dealt with the pollution that they're dealing with on a regular basis, you understand what they're about there. But in terms of climate change for the whole behavior of the country, they're not about that. They are about their national self-interest. And words don't matter to them. Actions matter to them. And that's what the Trump administration figured out. They tried very hard to work with this regime. The president was involved in personal diplomacy himself. But at the end of the day, it did not change their behavior. And that's where we are.
And I spoke with President Trump on Sunday, who said electric vehicles are going to put the auto industry out of business. That what the administration is doing right now to the unions and to the auto industry is actually working against them. But I want to get your take also on Russia, General, because Russia's now announcing plans to withdraw from the Ukraine grain deal. This happened yesterday, raising new concerns over the global food supply. This deal would have allowed Ukrainian exports to ship corn, wheat, and sunflower oil after Russia's invasion forced all exports to stop. A member of Ukraine's security service claiming responsibility for a deadly attack on a bridge connecting the Crimean Peninsula to Russia, saying that it was a joint operation with Kyiv's naval forces. What are your thoughts on this deal? And before you answer, let me just run this soundbite from President Trump. He joined me in that exclusive interview on Sunday Morning Futures. And here's what he told me about the billions that we've sent to Ukraine so far.
We're giving Ukraine, we're at $160 or $170 billion. By the way, Europe's at $15 or $20 billion. Why aren't they the same or more? They should be more. They're affected much more than we are. Europe isn't paying, just like NATO. When I became president, I said, you guys aren't paying your bills. I said, you're delinquent in your bill paying. And they asked me, they said, sir, does that mean you won't protect us from Russia if we haven't? I said, you mean you're delinquent and you want me to protect you? No, I will not protect you from Russia. The money came in by the billions.
General, what are your thoughts about this? That's a big difference, what the United States has sent to Ukraine versus what the Eurozone has, right?
The Europeans have really started to step up here. They're pushing this administration. It's the Europeans who pushed the tanks and the armored vehicles into Ukraine over the objections of the United States. It's the Europeans who are pushing the F-16s into Ukraine eventually. They're undergoing training right now against what the United States was doing. And even the long-range missiles, the French and the Brits have given them, and the United States has still failed to do that. The Europeans, when it comes to about the military aid, they're providing about half about what the United States is providing, and 5 or 6 of those countries, as a percentage of GDP, are providing more than the United States. In terms of the total amount that are given, certainly the United States is leading that effort. But the fact that we give aid reluctantly in terms of advanced weapons and slow them down, that has handicapped the Ukrainians. And you can see it in this offensive that they're conducting because they don't have the long-range missiles. They don't have the air power to protect themselves. And that has been the frustration. You commend the administration on the one hand for keeping NATO together and strengthening it. And on the other hand, they're handicapped in the Ukrainians and not giving them what they need when they need it. And I noticed President Trump said he would give considerably more money. And he's right about that. If you push the capability into Ukraine as quickly as possible, that helps to end this war. Listen, we have destroyed 50% of Russia's overall combat power. And we've done that for around $100 billion out of a $6 trillion budget. What an investment that is, and we haven't lost a single soldier in doing that. Not a single soldier, Maria. Think of that.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, that is incredible, and you're right. What a great point you made. General, it's good to see you as always. Thank you, sir.